Yeah,
Recording
so
started,
uh-huh.
so that's just to be that. It
Yeah,
started.
great, great. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming to our weekly meeting. We're definitely gonna keep it pretty relaxed today and just talk. And yeah, we have a like amazing guest speaker here today. So yeah, just a couple announcements before we get started. We're going to have an in-person meeting finally at Highland campus. The original one that we had scheduled actually got canceled because yeah, just we ended up submitting the event proposal like one day late, and yeah. But anyways, we're working on logistics and stuff, and yeah, the big announcement we have is the hackathon that we're planning. That's going to be the week after finals, so May 20th to 21st, and that's going to be in person as well and hybrid. So both May 20th to 21st, and we have like a great team working on coordinating that as well. So yeah, a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that are going on.
Yeah, and we're gonna have some food as well, and
Yeah.
a bunch of opportunities for you guys to come in and test out your coding skills and make new projects with new technologies.
Definitely. We're gonna have yeah, free food, swag, t-shirts, all that stuff. So yeah, and you also don't need to stay overnight if you don't want to. You can definitely come home and then join in the next day as well. So yeah, another thing, all of our projects, I'll scroll quickly through them, but yeah, we have our Wednesday events that we have our homework help and interview prep. We have our a browser game, uh, yeah, a machine learning project, our Discord bot, and our website portfolio. So a bunch of different projects and stuff that are going on, and all those stuff and all the information for those is in the Google Drive that we have, and also on our Google Calendar. Yeah, but I mean that's all the announcements we really had, and yeah, we have a guest speaker here today. So if you wanted to take it away, yeah, feel free.
Ex Googler.
Current actually. Oh, for this summer I'll be at YouTube. So, but I guess I can just go around give an introduction to myself. Hi, my name's Armel Talla. I'm a sophomore right now at UT Austin. I'm studying computer science and mathematics, a double major. If you ask me why I did it, I don't know. I thought it was a good idea. It still is, but I'm definitely suffering much harder. Yeah, in terms of experience, so I'm a sophomore, so got freshman my freshman year. I was fortunate enough, applied to Google Step, got the interview, grinded out the lead code, got the internship. So I did Google Step my freshman summer, and then this following summer, like I mentioned, I'll be returning, working on the YouTube team. And so let me know if you guys want a YouTube TV discount. I'm kidding. I don't think they'll give it to me, but so I think today, like I didn't really have a presentation set up much because right now, like you guys are, it's coming close to last exams, finals are coming up, so it's just super busy. But obviously, Malik, I'm pretty sure he's seen some of my TikToks and knows like I'm very well versed in talking about what happens as a computer science student, and just kind of like what to expect and how to prepare yourself for just your classes, and then also just getting internships. But just to get a good idea, I guess, what courses have you guys taken? If anyone or everyone wants to share.
I'm in like a data structures and algorithms class. So that's like the third one in the sequence. Like the first two are just like basic introductory to like Python, and then second one was C++, and then this third one is learning like data structures and algorithms
So,
uh, in C++.
okay. So I'm saying intermediate web programming, LAMP stack. Okay. So that's it. Okay. So it seems like you. Oh, let's see. C++, object and memory management. See, you starting to get into a bit of the lower level. Yeah. No. So I guess before I get into more of like specifically classes and stuff, I'll give you guys a bit of my background. So I started. I didn't really know what I wanted to do like in high school, right? Like I think like my biggest thing was like I just was wanting to play basketball. So I thought I was gonna play basketball up until junior year. Then you realize, and I kind of realized like, well, that's not really gonna be an option, at least at the level I wanted to play. So then it's kind of had like this big life crisis of figuring out. And I don't know when you guys kind of came around to knowing that you wanted to do CS, but mine was like my junior year. I got lucky enough where I wanted to get like some science credit out the way. They offered like a computer science course, and I was like, okay, maybe this was kind of science credit, and it kind of gets the math, and so that just kind of started the journey. But from there, I just kind of got hooked on it. It was like, oh, like I made a simple little like zombie shooter game, and it was just kind of seeing the fact that you could like make something. Sorry, oh, but seeing the fact that you can just like make something, like I was swinging when I decided. You see, it's never too late to when you figure out when you want to do it. Like either it's high school, like, but for me, it's like I never actually took it that serious. Like in high school, it wasn't something where I was like programming every single day. Like I was still playing basketball most of the time, and I think a lot of people when they hear like, oh, you got an internship your freshman year, and at the company you did, it's like you must have been programming since you were 12. It's like that's not the reality. I don't feel that way if you like, oh, I just literally started this year, or I started just a few years ago, I'm so behind. Like, I think that it's this misconception. Like everybody in CS wants to seem smarter than they actually are. But like really, everyone is really in the same boat and the same struggle. So, but for me, like I mentioned, like just realizing that like the abilities that you can have, just like make something and like you made that. I think that was just really cool. That got me hooked. But then entering like college, that's when I actually really started to pick up. I think most that I did in high school was take a course my senior year. I took another one, but it was the same thing. And we made like the highest we got was really using Scratch. So I don't know if any of you guys have used Scratch, but CS.
I have. Yeah, I have. I used to. I've taught it to like kids at a
Mhm.
little coding studio.
Yeah, and it's like it's a great one to use because like you really understand, you kind of get like a good idea of like the logic and just kind of it gives you a good understanding. I think it really helped when I was taking my first intro to programming class. But yeah, so for freshman year, just was lucky enough to like I was in a pod mentor that we had, like kind of like little group like this where people would come up, and those that have already kind of gone through CS during their senior year, they came and like taught. They would be kind of like our advisor, and so my mentor, she just told me about these different internships that were happening freshman year. Just kind of apply to them at the like just wing it. Was like, you know what, I'll just apply. Let's see what happens. I applied to a whole bunch. I'll say like one thing is like it's a numbers game. Specifically, like I think I applied to like 30, 40 different companies, and just really was like got rejected from a whole bunch. Didn't even hear back from a lot, and Google just happened to be like that last one, like at the last minute, unexpected. So you just never know. You just never know, and so yeah, that's really most of the background. I think like when I applied my freshman year, I just was only an intro to programming. So so this is kind of just to highlight like there's a lot of opportunities in computer science that people don't really know too much because either one, like you just don't know, you don't know the things you don't know. But also it's like some people have like this intimidation thing where they're like, no, I need to have way more experience in this. Like I barely know how to code. Like I was an intro to programming. Like I mentioned, you guys, like yes, I understood some logic from taking like my course in high school, but I didn't know how to like I didn't know data structure, I didn't know algorithms. But also that's specifically the reason why I got that internship is because that internship, that opportunity was specific for students in their freshman year that didn't have it, right? So there is opportunities like that for people. I think it's just like going out there, one, knowing about it, but two, also looking. And so from that point on, I guess like the favorite part I like to tell about this story is like, so I got this over like, yeah, there's Microsoft Explorer, there's Twitter Early Bird, there's Facebook University. So there's a bunch of like the bigger companies will do it. And also like another like startups. Like startups are a great place to work at to get experience because like you can just use that as a stepping stone, or you could work at a really cool startup. But like my favorite part of just kind of like the story was like, so obviously Google was like the last place I applied to. I heard back it was over a winter break. I was just kind of like I was driving around delivering Uber, doing the food services. I was like, I need money when I go back to school. Next, I get the email like I get the email that day, and then it was like I had 2 weeks. So at that point, it was like, do I keep driving or do I spend like the next 6 to 8 hours grinding out lead code? So to kind of give a reference, like the interview the interviews are very technical. They're like and this is like you probably guys have heard this, like they're mainly just lead code. Depending on the stage, like for Google Step, like Facebook University, there's probably just like 2 rounds of questions. There's not as many, but like if you're aiming for like just a normal sweet internship, like you're probably going to be doing 3 to 4 rounds of just like these lead code questions. And so for some people they'll say that, oh, I barely studied. It just came easy. Like I can't say that. Legitimately are the questions around lead code medium. Yeah, definitely around medium. Sometimes you might get lucky, get it easy. Most of the times, like if you do get it easy, what happens is they'll give you an easy question, you'll solve it pretty fast, and they'll give you another question, and like it'll kind of move up in difficulty. So it's usually around medium. If you're sometimes you see a hard. It really just depends on the kind of your interviewer. But so to put in perspective, like I think I spent like 6 to 8 hours a day for like 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, 6 to 8 hours a day, 2 weeks just doing leak codes. At that time, I probably did like 100 problems, and like that was it was a bit overkill. It was definitely overkill. Like I was way more prepared than I needed to be. Like I was able to answer the questions pretty comfortably. But I mean, with an opportunity, like you don't want to take a risk, take a chance. So I think yeah, and that kind of just lays out from from when I started to now, and then like currently just been going through classes. I haven't done too much like outside projects. I think that's something I tell a lot of people to do. But because just kind of fortunate enough in that freshman year that I like have some internship experience. So if you have internship experience, you don't need as much outside projects. Because if you don't, you're trying to get your first one. The project's really helpful. And I think I'll kind of stop there and for questions. Yeah. And I
So
could,
how hard were like like what were the questions that they asked for the Google Step interview? Because I know for these like first year ones, like the
yeah.
Facebook University, like Microsoft Explorer, I know from like friends they ask like very little, like probably like one or two questions.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely right. They asked like one or two. For me, it was two questions. I had two questions. I would say like they ranged around. They stayed definitely more on the easy. They stayed like more on the like leak code easy. But if you've done leak code, you're like some of these leak code easies should be mediums. So but I remember like one of my first ones. It was kind of like I can't remember what it was. It was something about like searching through this list of letters and like pulling out specific, maybe like I can't remember exactly what the question was. But from that point on, it like they asked me another follow up questions, which then involved me having to know how to use like hash maps, hash tables, and stuff like that. So like that's why people a lot of times say like that knowledge of data structures is really helpful. So you got a question. What did you study to prepare? Do I have that book on me? Let me run real quick.
I think he's talking about this one,
It's kind
Cracking
of
the
blurry,
coding
yeah.
interview.
Oh, I've heard of that.
the cracking the coding interview.
Yeah, but I heard it's only in Java though.
Is it it?
Yeah, yeah. It
Nice.
is in Java. I heard you say it. I was like, no, I know I have it somewhere. But so yeah, I use this to study. I went through like so LeetCode, they have like their different learning sections. And so what I did was I just went through like those because at that time, reference, I didn't know any data structure. I do not know any data structure. I took intro to programming, so at least I like knew how to code in Java. And yes, it is in Java. If you are gonna do interviews, highly recommend Python. There's also Python interview books. So I would look at those. Like if you just look at the most popular one, you'll find it. Because Python is just like a much easier language. It just like handles a lot of stuff for you. But so I use a book because the book just gives you a lot of advice on kind of like how to approach those problems, like especially time complexity. So a thing that some people don't prepare for is like they do ask you like, okay, what is how fast is your implementation? If you do implement something, like they might ask you like they might be asking you how quick your implementation is because there's a better implementation. So things like that were very helpful coming from the book. I think the leak code like learning sections, they just kind of were good for like for the fact that I never learned data structures. Like what I would do is like I would watch a YouTube video before I would like quickly learn that data structure, and then like I would go try to go through the path of doing the problems, and that like that learning sections that they have for those different data structures, they did kind of explain them. So it's definitely a good way to do it, especially if you're kind of like in a time crunch. And then from that point on, it's like one thing is like you can read as much as you want, you can watch a lot of YouTube videos, but like you're not going to be good at solving those problems unless you just do like a lot. Like that's like there's no way around it. There's more efficient ways to do it than like instead of cramming it like I did in 2 weeks. Like I would actually go with a strategy of like doing a couple problems a week. So if you could do like one a day, I don't know, three a week or something like that, but being more consistent, I think that's definitely the move. What's up, Jacob?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, so what if you just don't really know how to tackle a problem like head on? Like, are you just gonna search up a YouTube video on it, or are you gonna like first try and figure it out and then like eventually give up and be like, okay, I need to like look this up and see what the answer is? Is
I
that
think they're like the all the questions, like the most popular ones on Leak Code. If you just look it up on YouTube and then add the language next to it,
yeah? Because
it'll show like a full detailed like explanation
hmm
video. And then
yeah,
if you want like the most optimal solutions, there's like GitHubs.
right. I
Mm,
was just wondering if that was the best approach because like I'll look up a YouTube video and I'll be like, oh well, should I just memorize this now? Like, or should I
yeah.
try and like go my own way in solving it, you know? Like not
Mhm.
just copy and paste what they did, you know? Because I don't
Yeah.
want to do that.
No, yeah, no, that's a great question. Definitely, you don't want to memorize. I think so. The strategy, like I don't know if you guys know like Nick White. I was like watched a whole
Mm,
bunch of his videos. Nick White, there's like Kevin Washington. They make LeetCode solution problems. But one of the videos that Nick mentioned, he said he said that what you want to do is like first the thing about LeetCode is like a lot of it's patterns. There's a lot of different patterns, and that's like kind of like programming in just general. There's a lot of different ways you can solve it. There's like different techniques like pointers, you have dynamic programming, different things you can do. So you want to try to do as many problems as possible when you're first getting around because like just so you can be exposed to the different type of problems you'll see. So what I did specifically was like when I was in that stage was just being like, okay, I need to just do as many problems to be exposed to all the different types of problems there are. I spent 15 minutes. I put a timer on myself, like, okay, I'm not allowed to like give up on this. I have to spend 15 minutes and just like try to solve it, right? And like you can't just like you have to just keep pushing. Like even when you think like I'm absolutely stuck, I just have no clue at all. Like it's really good that you continue to push yourself because you're just making your brain work. But yeah, at that point, it's like there's obviously kind of like diminishing returns. It's like, okay, if you're gonna, you can't spend a whole hour on a problem. That's just like not efficient. You're not gonna get through enough problems. So after 15 minutes in that first stage of just kind of be exposed, it's like you're after the 15 minutes, you go look at the solutions. I personally like watching the YouTube videos because they would explain. Sometimes reading it is good as well. But I felt like the YouTube videos would explain it. But I would watch that YouTube video probably like 2 or 3 times. Like, and then I would, but mainly the biggest thing wasn't I tried to copy what their solution was. I try to like understand how they approach that problem. Like, how did they think about solving the problem, right? Because like writing down something is that's like the trivial part. It's like how did they actually come about writing it, right? And so I think like which the best way to do it is like after you watch the video, after you felt like you understand the way they approach that problem, go back and like do the question without going and looking for help. And you should like maybe put like only 5 minutes, or really if you just watch it and it's fresh, then usually you could just like go in there and like almost retype. But what you realize is that you can't like because you didn't memorize, you're not going to be able to instantly like just copy what they did. You'll kind of think about it more. You'll kind of have to think about it to implement your own solution, but it should be like a lot faster because you understand the technique.
gotcha. Do you take notes also, or like
And
just write somewhere like just notes on the questions and stuff like that too? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, I took some notes. For I think generally though, like generally I didn't spend too much time taking notes because like what I realized was like it was specifically like it was a data structure. Like most of the times, like it was like you should use this data structure for this type of problem, or you should use this type of idea. So it was like once you did enough problems, it just became ingrained. So like at the beginning, like I would write down like that technique they used, but then like after a while, like I didn't look at the notes just because like I did so many.
Right. All right, cool. Thank you.
Oh, one thing I want to add to like once you kind of done a lot of problems, increase the time because interviews they usually give you about 30 to 40. They give you 45 minutes. It's usually around 45 minutes, but I would push yourself to try to do it in 30 minutes just so that when you're in a real situation, like that extra 15 minutes can be helpful. Any other questions? Because I have another stage. So I talked about kind of like my background, but I can talk to you guys more about like studying, things to do that could be helpful for getting internships. But I just want to make sure if answer any questions anybody got.
I wanted to ask, well, two questions actually. One is at UT, what like language do they mainly teach you?
Mhm.
And then second, like what did you mainly do in your Google Step internship?
Yeah. So at UT, we start off with Java. I think the reason why we start off with Java is because following Java, like kind of like the path that students have to take is you take intro to programming, you take data structures, and you take data structures and discrete math. So that's like the proof-based math class that people take. And so you take those, and then after that, you go into operating systems and computer architecture and operating systems. And the reasons why I think we start with Java is because Java is like a good foundational language, in my opinion, to learn. Like it's difficult enough with like the different syntaxes and the certain things that you have to remember with variable types and everything like that, where you kind of are understanding like what's actually happening in the code more than if you start with Python. But then it's also in the fact that since we go to computer architecture, we go from Java to just instantly start using C and like C++. So I've mainly been programming in I program in C and C++ mainly, like even in my internship. And so that it's like to the internship. So last summer I was working on the search team, but within the Google search team, I was working within like they call it. I don't. This is a secret. You guys can't tell anybody. No, I'm kidding. But it was more of like it was like their they called it their like this like their geo team. Like so, I was working on like the search of like Google Maps kind of right. And so my project was to kind of take users like all the information that Google would kind of like have about them, like okay, what language did they use, and kind of like like what language they use to like type, how did they search the internet, were they specifically searching websites in like Hindi or like a different language than English, because then what Google will try to do is like offer like a translation for that language that was your preference. And so like in the United States, it's pretty simple because like mostly everybody speaks and searches things in English. But the thing is, like in different countries, like India and stuff like that, where they speak a different language, but most of the internet's in English. So it's like if you could offer them, like, hey, like we know, like you specifically like using this language. Like, would you rather have us translate that page for you? So that was the team I worked on. That was a project.
I see. And that was like in C and C++. Did you have to like? I know you said because prior to that you had only taken like intro to computing classes and like intro programming classes. Did you have to like learn C++ on the job?
Yeah. So by the time I took the internships, I learned data structures, which was really helpful. Because like once you learn data structures, honestly, like you can start learning almost anything in programming, because like data structures like the foundations. It's just like how do you take data, different structures to like store it in that would be the most optimal for whatever problem you're trying to solve. And so it was like so I did have to learn C like over the summer, C++ over the summer, but like they were very understanding of it. They were like they gave me like I think it was like a week to learn it or something. But like once you learn one language, it's kind of fairly easy to learn another, because like most of the like for loops and stuff, you kind of you go from not having to learn like the basics of programming to more about like okay, what makes this language different than the other language. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I see what you mean.
For sure. Any other questions? Okay. If there's not any, I'll kind of go into studying programming, kind of studying and like things to do outside. So when it comes to classes, I guess I'll say like, what is y'all's biggest struggle when it comes to just CS in general? If you guys can just drop that in the chat or speak out loud.
I guess not feeling like it's practical. Like for example, the class I'm taking where I'm learning the like the lamp stack and stuff. I don't know like how practical it's gonna be, even though it's web programming, but just like having to do like MVC stuff and like it just sometimes it doesn't feel like it's practical, and I'm just doing it just for the class, and then when I actually go to work or something that just not gonna be applicable. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No, I feel that. Totally understand. Lack of implementation for stuff.
Yeah, like for for me, I'm taking like data structures and algorithms. I don't know if it's the teacher or like the nature of the class itself, but we barely like we learn about like stacks, lists and stuff like that, different implementations in C, but then we never like implement them or do anything with them from scratch. Like the lab work and stuff is like very minimal. Like we've only had like 2 or 3 labs. I guess this is like a grievance more towards the specific like professor in class that I'm taking rather than an overarching thing. But yeah, it's just like a lot of stuff to remember. So,
And a lack
and
of
I wish,
modernization, to
yeah,
be
that
honest.
too.
The
Yeah.
lack. Wait, what'd you say? The lack of what?
Lack of modernization, like within like lecture
Mm,
classes. Like it's a lot of the stuff is pretty dated. Not here at ACC, fortunately, because I've had teachers who would teach the new stuff, but I've been in classes where like, dude, like this is ancient stuff. Like you shouldn't be teaching this. It should be like instead of Python 2.7, you should be teaching Python 3.8 or something like that.
mm,
Um, but yeah,
yeah.
I've seen that a lot.
I see. I see. And to read off, someone said extracting best practices that represent more than just stringing together syntax. In other words, how do you achieve more holistic, optimal solutions? Or it's more not knowing what we will do on the job, like how much of what we're learning about what we'll use. Now, these are all like super valid, like super valid. Like most of the times, like because whenever you do get to the point where you take classes like operating systems and computer architecture, you really will start to question like, why am I using this? I don't want to be a systems engineer. I don't want to work on hardware. I think one way to kind of like one, you guys aren't wrong. Like most of the times they're outdated, they're pointless to what you will actually do in the job. But one thing that kind of put in perspective for me was, so I was talking to some other engineers there like during my internship, right? And one thing that for some reason all of them stressed was like, try your best to actually learn when you're in like those computer architecture classes and those operating systems courses. Like it may seem pointless, it may seem like it doesn't relate to what you do in the job, which doesn't at all relate to anything that I did during my job. But I think what they were trying to get at was that one, what these classes do is like they they force you to think about more like think about more in like as a programmer, right? Because the thing is, when you're going to have to approach different like problems, like there's gonna be a lot of abstraction you have to think about. There's gonna be a lot more critical thinking, right? And so one of the things that you don't really get when you're learning intro to programming and data structures is like, yes, you like get to like think about how you would implement it if you were given the opportunity to, which really sucks. Like you really should be actually implementing in that class, like, because that's how you learn best. But you're not really forced to really think as critical and think about like solutions. You're thinking still more just like you're just thinking of programming. But the thing about being a software engineer and being a computer scientist is like you're having to think a lot more abstract. Most of CS, most of programming is a bunch of abstractions laid together. And so when I've taken like these courses of comp arc and everything like that, it's not like the material has been helpful, but it's the way it kind of reshifts and refocuses your thinking, right? And that's if you try to make the most out of those courses. Because and there's also cases where it's like that information, that understanding of what happens at like those lower levels can come in handy at like very small points. So it's not that they're helpful throughout your whole career, but it's more the fact that one, it helps with the way you think. It helps you kind of build that more of like that software, that engineering thinking. Because like in operating systems right now, the course I'm taking, we're having to build an operating system from scratch, and like just having to think about how someone did that is a lot different than just being like, okay, how do I implement the best, the fastest linked list? It's like now you're not just implementing a programming abstraction, but you're taking those programming abstractions and actually trying to solve a problem, which is like the biggest thing of engineering, right? And so that's one thing. That's something I would say, like, kind of just helping put it in perspective that, like, these aren't skills that are directly applicable, but there's little things in those things. Like, there's soft, not soft skills, but there's other skills you learn that are very, very helpful. So I would look at it that way to just kind of keep the motivation, because it really can get like demotivating when you're doing something. It's really difficult. And you're like, why do I even need this? In the long run, it's like it has benefits to it. And something that I hear a lot is that people that don't go and like get a degree in CS is like they wish they would, because I've met actually people that in their 30s, and I think like latest I met a dude like close to his 40s where he's come back to school, and he mentioned, he was like, yeah, like there's just things you don't like. You could either try to go learn about like learn some things that you would get in a computer science degree by yourself, but some of it is just so daunting, and some of it is just like so much. It's like while you have a full-time job, like you don't want to go back and do that, right? And so like in the short term, it seems pointless, but in the long term, it's like one of those where it paid dividends. And then second thing I would say just about learning and like when you're going through school is like you should expect to have to teach yourself. Like that's like the biggest thing that just kind of that once you realize that, like, you do a lot better in a bunch of your classes because you understand like these professors, they're here to like teach you, but they're more there as like a resource whenever you get stuck. That's like the biggest thing. Like they're not like, because some one you'll have professors where it's like you are too smart, you don't like, you can't explain this in my level, or you don't teach us enough, like you aren't actually just a good teacher, right? And so, but even though they're not a good teacher, there's a reason why they're teaching that course. So they do understand it. So it's only when you can go ask specific questions. It's only when you can go ask some questions that can clarify things, and you use them more as like a road. Imagine they're like your Stack Overflow. They're just like a Stack Overflow that you could just go straight to, you know. Because when you're out in the workforce, it's like you're not always going to want to work ask your coworkers because they have stuff to do and they're not getting paid to answer your questions. But the way you think about it is like your professor did get paid there to answer your questions, right? And so I would say like understand that you're gonna have to learn a lot. And I know someone mentioned like having to think about kind of how do you think about programming best practice and thinking holistic and finding optimal solutions. It's like what you do, what a CS degree teaches, what a CS degree shows to people in the workforce. And everyone I talked to like 30 engineers. I was just scheduling a whole bunch that were all working at Google, and like they all just said like the degree just shows that you can learn. That is like it, because like I mentioned, your professors are going to teach you. You once you realize that you're going to have to teach yourself a lot of material, that's when you start to do a lot better because you understand the amount of work you have to do. And I also mean like, and like I went to a point like I like to read books, but then I realized like I have to start grabbing technical books and start reading more of just like if you want to become a better programmer, like the learning doesn't stop once you just get your degree. Like you're gonna have to continue to learn. So this is a book. This is specific to someone when it comes to best practices and like just thinking about coding. I highly recommend. I should probably read more, but hey, books are great. Books are great. Best form of media. Sometimes YouTube is great, but like books just get straight to the point. This is a really good book. This was like recommended. So highly recommend. In terms of like this is more practical. So to summarize just kind of everything I've said, like be like CS is just teaching you the foundational skills. That's really what it is. Not teaching you like what you're gonna do in the job, and then you just kind of have to accept that. Like you can either be like, okay, like you're gonna complain about it, or you're gonna accept like, okay, I'm gonna learn these foundational skills, but I'm gonna put in the extra work outside of class to learn what I need to learn to be ready for the job. And also, once you get to the job, it's like you're never gonna stop learning. You like technology moves so quickly. Maybe someday like we're all just working in crypto. I don't know, I'm a big crypto person, so but maybe we're all just using crypto tools, right? And it's like you're going to have to learn that eventually. You can't be that like you're not going to be that programmer that's still using like C when everyone's now using a whole different language or using some really out of date, because like the industry evolves in just a matter of like 20 years. So that's one thing. And when I guess when it comes to studying is like, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to like add to your point because I used to ask one of my teachers, I was like, why don't we learn like the hot new stuff like mobile development? Well, I know like why mobile development because that stuff like is constantly updating, but
Mhm.
I was asking like, why don't we learn like the more practical stuff like web development at least or something like that, and or like crypto engineering. And I think what they said was that exactly what you said is that like it's a constantly evolving field and learning like these basics, even with like C, which is like a pretty old language now, but it's still widely used. But once you
Mhm.
learn like the basics with it, I think you can kind of apply it. Everything is derived from these basics. So
Exactly.
once you kind of like learn it, then it just becomes like easier to learn everything else.
Exactly. No, exactly. And it's one of those things where like it sucks in the short term. Like CS is like hard, dude. Like it really is difficult. Like once you start taking more and more classes and you kind of going through the degree, what was the name of the book? The Pragmatic Programmer. The Pragmatic Programmer. Great book. These two books right here, definitely check them out. But yeah. But once you start getting through more and more classes, like I took my intro programming, I took data structures, and I was like, okay, these classes are difficult, but like I can manage this. Then like it just constantly keeps getting harder and harder, and it's like one of those where it's like it really just stresses like, are you the type of person that is willing to put in the work? And last thing I'll just talk about when it comes to like classes and just getting the most out of them, because I truly believe like every single class you take, you really should try to get the most out of, even if your grade doesn't reflect that. Like grades isn't a reflection of how much you know. It's just how well are you able to do what the teacher wants you to do. And sometimes it's like sometimes what the teacher's asking you to do isn't like doesn't really make sense, right? So it's like that your grade won't reflect how much you're learning. But if you feel like you've put in the best amount of work to learn, then like that's really all that matters at the end of the day. But last thing I'll say just about classes is like anytime you're not doing well in the class, or anytime you're trying to think about like how do I prepare myself, how do I set myself up to do well, it's like put in more work into that class. Like it sounds so like just straightforward, but it's like the only way you become good at programming, how to get good, the only way you become good at programming is by programming a lot. That's like the only way. Like you could try to skip around it and be like, oh, I won't do this recommended problems that they tell me to do, or I won't, do this project, or I wait last minute. Like the only way you become good at programming is to program, is to do more problems. And that's with like anything in STEM. So that's my whole spiel on classes. I'll stop in questions, and then the last part I'll talk about is just internships. Yes.
Yeah, so how do you like manage your time? Because like I've been wanting to build projects. Like I just have a lot of like different things I want to do. Like I don't know, just learn more stuff through my classes, do more lead code, all that stuff. But like, how do you personally manage your time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because there's only 24 hours in a day. But I think one of the craziest things that like if you
8 of
sometimes
those you
sit think
spend
about,
sleeping.
8 of those you do spend sleeping. One of the craziest, and don't sacrifice sleep though. Don't sacrifice sleep. I can almost go on a whole rant about why you shouldn't. But one of the most interesting things I think about is like think about everything Elon Musk does, and he has the same hours in the week as us, right? See, some people don't want to be Elon, some people don't want to do this crazy, but it's like to tell you like if you think that if you think that you just don't have enough time, it's probably like you should ask yourself like, am I spending my time wisely? Am I keeping track of my time? Am I wasting it sometimes just scrolling on social media when like there's no point of you scrolling. You're just scrolling because like you're trying to avoid doing your work. But the way I specifically manage my time is like I use a Google Calendar, and I do this thing called like block scheduling where like I kind of like I lay out specifically what I'm doing in like most hours of the day. So it's like because some people will just be like, okay, I'm gonna do my homework from 5 to 10 o'clock. But it's like, what homework are you doing? Two, should it even take you 5 hours to do? And a lot of people like plans his day so deep that he plans 5 minute blocks. Yeah, I do like hour blocks, do 30-minute blocks. I do it all my days in blocks. But so the thing is, like most of the time is whenever you don't specifically lay out what you're gonna do within a time frame, you waste a lot of time figuring out what you want to do. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do my homework. Then you're like, oh, I have all these different options of homework I can be doing right now. So if you like kind of plan ahead, plan out kind of you don't have to plan out your entire day, but have a to-do list, or specifically like know like, okay, I need to do this homework, I need to do this assignment in like 2 hours. Like I know I can do it in 2 hours. Obviously you want to be reasonable, but the thing is like there's this thing called I can't remember what it is. It's like hedonic no, it's not, I don't know what it is. It's some
Pomodoro.
love. Parkinson's law. I think it's Parkinson's law, where like the amount of work will fill up the time or space out like given to it. So it's like if you give yourself 4 hours to do an assignment, but it really can take you only 2 hours, it's like you're going to spend the 4 hours because you told yourself that, right? And sometimes it's hard for you to not spend that much time because you know it's not due. Because like whenever a due date is around, people are very good at like getting it done before the due date or that time. But so you have to kind of create this like pressure for yourself of being like, yo, I'm going to only give myself 2 hours. Like I'm going like if I don't get this done in 2 hours, if I don't do this in 2 hours, it's like, and then you kind of create this sense of urgency for yourself. So I would say like if you're not using an agenda, if you're not using a Google Calendar, like kind of have either like plan out time blocks in your day where you're going to do specific work, or have a very clear to-do list, and with that to-do list have like the amount of hours you should spend and like maybe time yourself. And then when it comes to studying, if you guys heard like that Pomodoro technique where it's like 30 minutes, 5 minutes, or like I do like an hour and like 10 minutes. So different things like that. Yeah. Any other questions? That was a great
Yeah,
question.
I wanted to ask more on this question. So I know you have like you juggle quite a bit, right? You do like,
Mhm.
I know you're in the blockchain club for UT, which we actually had them come speak here.
Oh, that's
Um,
sick.
yeah. So I know you have like a podcast as well. So do you do like any coding right now, like other than your main classes? Because I know it's like the height of your college career in terms of intensity. Do you do
Mm.
like side projects, or since you have like kind of the guarantee from the summer that you're returning to Google, that you're just like you kind of have it like you're just focusing on school and like your two side projects there?
It's a great question. So yeah, definitely keep myself busy, keep involved. But so for me, it's like because I got the internship, it allowed me to not stress too much about doing like personal projects because it was like my personal project is what I did during that internship, right? That's outside. Because the thing is, if you don't have an internship, you want to work on projects outside of the ones you do in class because one, it shows employers that like you want to, you want to do this out. Like you're not just getting the degree, you're doing more, right? And like I said, if you do more programming outside of class, it shows that you just want to be a better programmer. But so for me, like for me, it was not to like spend my time working on just like a project just to work on a project. And I think this applies to anybody, but like trying to think about a project that actually like does something for you, does something for someone, or maybe if it's like a startup. So like right now, like I didn't work on any like personal projects. I mainly did like school. But this summer, like I am actually starting to work on a personal project, but that's specifically because I'm working on a startup. So it's like I have a very specific thing that I'm building this project for. If the startup fails, it's a cool project that I can talk about. I have a lot more to give because the thing is like sometimes people will work just on like any beginner project, which is like it's not bad. I'm not trying to downplay like just working on like a project that you find on YouTube because like that's good because you're learning some skills from it. But I'll say like the projects that you really want to like emphasize and that employers really like are those projects that like, okay, I built this because I had this little niche problem of being like, I didn't feel like, submitting this assignment. So I wrote some bot to automate it. Like, or my friend wanted like an easier way to search the school food and I made the website where it like had put all the lunches and I don't know, something where it's like it solves some problem for someone's you something because that's what you do as an engineer. You're trying to solve a problem for customers, right? That's what all companies care about. It's like once you get on the workforce, you're not just building a project because like that's the requirement that your teacher gives you and stuff, but it's because like you're doing something for customers, whether that's internal, you're building for developers or things like that. And so for me, to simply answer your question, I did not work on a project. Now I am, but that's because I finally figured out like a project that actually has some meaning for me specifically, or like that that I could talk about more than just like, oh, I found this on YouTube and it was like a cool calculator thing I did. I think someone put a question: do you feel like cutting yourself off at 2 hours creates risk that you're not able to deep dive on details of your assignment that could be beneficial? Or do you feel like stressing over details or sort of missing the point and overemphasizing details when you prefer to learn from top level? This is a very big question. Okay, so when I said 2 hours, or that was an arbitrary 2 hours, I think like when you're programming, like you should be spending good chunks of time at a time. Like depending on what that is, depending on the assignment, how much time you have. Um, but Daniel, could you elaborate on the question? I just want to make sure I answer it correctly. I'll give you my best insights on it. But yeah, going down rabbit holes or rabbit holes. Perhaps I'm missing the big picture.
I think
I
he's
see.
trying to ask like in putting like you said you were talking about putting like a time limit. I think he's
Mhm.
asking that when you put a time limit, is it like he's asking like do you miss out on going into the deeper dives that you do when you have like a larger like indefinite time limit or time block? Um, and is that like is like the negative effect of that like worse than like taking up like 4 hours instead of two, for example?
No, I see. Yeah. I would say it depends on like what you're what that project you're working on, right? Like if I'm working on like a personal project, and I'm just really doing it's like one like building maybe like a good product for other people to use, then I would say like I do try to make sure I'm focusing on like the bigger picture, like the details of like what actually needs to be built for that product. But the timing is arbitrary. Like the amount of time you spend, I think it's like if you need to block off 4 hours, if you think 4 hours is the best for that, then like cool. But when it comes to like school things, like I'm just trying to do the project and like, do what I need to do for that project. So I think like it's figuring out like how much time do you actually need. And like sometimes like you'll say like I need to do 2 hours, but if you don't do it in those 2 hours, like you shouldn't feel like there's not someone that's controlling you or your schedule. It's like you can make more time if you believe like you need more time for that thing. And also like I try to do it in like I'll do like a couple hours this day, a couple hours another day. I'm not a big believer in like doing it all at once, unless you're starting super super early. Like a lot of people, they do their projects all at once because they start like the day of, which is never a good idea. Like I highly recommend you always start your assignments super super early. But I guess like hopefully to answer your question is these time blocks are specifically not to force yourself to like it's not to force yourself to get it done by this specific time, but it's to force yourself to not waste time. And it's the fact that like if you give yourself way more time than like it's actually needed, right? Then it's like you're gonna fill that time in with like scrolling through your phone sometimes when you get bored or doing certain things. So what I'll say is like when you're trying to like I guess plan your day or like plan how much time you need, it's like be realistic, but also like understand like do you need to do it all in one day? Can you do some this time, some of the other time? Like does it and I guess like it's to ask yourself the question of like what is your goal of this? Like do you want to go deep do you want to go super deep on the details of this project? Is that something that you care about? Or do you just want to like get it done and understand from a higher level? So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, what's up?
I wanted to ask. So I know for me, I'm trying to like transfer to UT Austin, but
Mm,
from ACC. So, but like once you're in UT, like right now, like I guess at your stage, how much do like grades matter? Obviously, like you need to pass, but
mhm.
is it like is it true like the motto where it's like C's get degrees, or do you find it do you find any like much more worth in sort of putting in the extra effort to get that A?
That's a great question. Yeah, so definitely if you're trying to transfer, I know this isn't your question, but just that first part was like you do need a. I know like people say like you need to keep your grades like super super high if you're trying to transfer to
Yeah.
UTCS. But once you're like at the whatever school that you want to be at, then I would say it's like optimize for learning, don't optimize for like a grade. I'm the type of person where I want to go to grad school, like because at my school they have like a 5 year master program.
Yeah, it's like the
So
5-year integrated one. Is
yeah,
isn't it your junior year that you apply for it?
yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna apply for that next semester. So like I have to keep a really high GPA. So that's what forces me to be like I'm like focused on getting A's in this class. But if I wasn't aiming for that, and it's also something like I'm realizing as well, it's like I don't like you don't need a master's when it comes to CS, right? If you get a 4 year degree, that is perfect. Like you can go into workforce and have a great career. Um, so a master's is kind of like a plus. So there's different reasons I want to do it. So, but that's the only reason why I am like I focus on like getting an A and putting like the really extra effort, extra hours. But when I'll say in general, if you're not aiming for masters, like I'm doing my 4 years and I'm going out to the workforce, like you should be optimizing for learning. So it's like and sometimes and optimizing for learning will look like trying to get the best grade in the class. That's because like you what you want to do is like you want to make sure you understand the material, but you don't care about what grades you get on the test. If you feel like because like I mentioned, like the grades you get on the test does not reflect who you are as a person. That's something I have to, like been having to tell myself, and also like realizing that like I met people that had a 2.9 GPA and they work at Facebook now. So it's like your grade isn't a really big concern when it comes to getting jobs. I think if you keep it above like a 3, it's really like your goal should just be like keep it at a 3. If you're sitting at like a 2, that might raise questions if employers ever ask, but they most of the times they don't usually ask, right? Um, they don't usually ask. And so but when it comes to like if you're like looking for like a specific grade, it's like 3 is like a good. But when it comes to just like what you want to, it's like getting the most out of like that degree. So like optimize for learning, maybe you do have to put in the extra hours to learn that class, and it's also like thinking like certain classes. It's like if you know you want to do machine learning, so like specifically for me, I'll give you a great example. So right now I'm in operating systems, and I'm also taking like linear algebra and probability. I want to do machine learning. That's partly why the reason why I want to go to grad school. Linear algebra and probability are more important for me than my operating systems class, right? And so like the thing is with operating systems class is like I'm gonna do my best in that, but like I'm not as focused on if I really like if I really understand that material, it's like okay, it's cool, but like I'm really making sure that I'm spending the extra hours to learn probability and linear because that has more to do with what I want to do in the long term, right? So you have to like pick and you so sometimes it's hard, you don't know what you want to do. You're like, I don't know if I want to do machine learning. So it's like so at that point, it's like, okay, maybe just make sure you're learning these things that are make sure you're really emphasizing on learning things that are specific to software engineering just in general. And that's a whole bunch of different classes. But to really summarize your question, to like just answer it simply, it's like I said, just optimize for learning. Don't worry about grades. Sometimes when you are optimizing for learning, that's going to look like you're trying to get the best grade. But what you should tell yourself is like, I'm trying my best to learn this material. If I go take the exam and it doesn't, and I do bad in it, it's like ask yourself like, did I actually did I actually learn the best as I could? And if it's like your answer to that is a yes, it's like okay, you live on with your day. Maybe you try a little bit harder for the next exam if you need to make sure that you're passing the class or keeping whatever arbitrary GPA you want to keep. So I think that's what I would do.
I see. Thank you for that. Yeah. I also wanted to
Yeah, no
ask, what did
problem.
you have on your resume when applying to Google?
Yeah, no. So what I had was I had like the 2 jobs I did in high school. So it was like Walmart and like I was like a server. That was just some weird experience. I had 2 projects from my intro to programming class that I had. But I think the biggest thing that one I had a like coming in, I had a 4.0 technically because I took like classes in when I was in high school. Took like AC, not ACC, but a community college in San Antonio, and so like those transferred over, and I also had like some other A's for like a dual enrollment class I had. Yeah, dual enrollment. And so I put my GPA on there. So I think that's strong. I think also like school, sometimes like the schools you go to like can help. UTCS is just like known in the it's just at least in the computer science world, it's a pretty good school. So
Yeah,
that
number
helped
9
as well.
ranked.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty dope, pretty dope. But that also means way too smart professors that just like are too smart sometimes in their classes. But also, and then like another thing, but for me, I think my biggest thing was I started a club. I got involved. Like I started a club when I got to school. First thing I did is like I kind of knew I wanted to do that, not because like resume boost, but because like I'm more worried about like starting something and like leaving something at the school that like I can always come back to and be like, yo, this is really cool. Like kids are so
Which
involved
club
with
did you
it.
start?
So I started originally as like a machine learning club. It was like called Texas DeepNet, but now because I became really obsessed with blockchain, it's now Texas Blockchain Engineering. And now like I
Oh,
work with Texas Blockchain, and I'm actually going to be president of the club. I think next semester. So like I started that club like my freshman year. So just showing like the initiative.
so
But I think
is blockchain and blockchain engineering club different?
yeah, so it's different, different in the sense of the fact that like it's 2 different orgs. Like when the registration, if you were to go to like the UT like registration website, like it would be 2 different clubs, and that's because like Texas Blockchain is under Macomb School of Business, and I'm getting Texas Blockchain Engineering under the Computer Science Department as like an official org for them. So it's 2 different things, but like we work together and like share resources and plan out events and stuff like that. So yeah. But yeah, I think so. Definitely like different things when it comes to like your resume, getting involved. So yeah. Oh yeah, no, thank you, Todd. Thank you for coming. And then if you guys want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll check it tonight. I don't usually check it, but if you guys send me a connection, I'll be happy to connect back with you guys. Just like send me a message like, yo, I was at the top. You did at ACC and whatever. So, but yeah, happy to connect. Happy to just help you guys out anyway. If you guys have a question, just ping me on there. And when you go to my page, it's gonna say follow. Click the click the buttons, the 3 dots, so you can actually get to the connect because you don't have to follow me. That's kind of weird. I just have it there so people don't bother me. But yeah, that's That's really about
Yeah.
everything I have on that point. I know it's 7 o'clock, and I don't want to take up too much time unless anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, we had what's his name? Owen and Jake come in to speak. I think this was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was pretty interesting,
Okay.
but I didn't know it was like two separate clubs technically, um, for like the registration.
Yeah. Two sub clubs, but under the same mission, same vision. But yeah, it's
Do you
everything, y'all.
what I wanted to ask, what technologies do you see as or wait, I guess Jordan asked the question. Do you think a degree really helps with getting a job in the tech field? I've had a few people tell me you just need certifications. Do you think having a degree might help?
Jordan, this is a great question because I have very strong feelings about this. Let me tell you, if you want to be a software engineer, um, get a degree. Like, don't think the degree is useless. Don't think you're wasting 4 years of your life. Let's look at it from an investment standpoint. Return on investment. Spend how many years? You spend 4 years of your life. You spend maybe let's say you spend 100K. This is and you guys probably won't because you guys took the smart route and are saving money, getting your basics out the way and stuff like that. So that plus the fact that you can come out of school making like 100K, you can come out and making like I know people that have made 200 coming straight out of school, and then that's just a beginning. You have a long career after that. Great from an investment standpoint, but from an actual like certifications, the thing about doing boot camps and things like that is like if you're trying to move up, you're going to get stuck. Like you're just going to get like there's like people can tell you like, oh, you only need certs, you can go get a boot camp and you're good. The thing is like if you want to stay at the same position, the same like job, like that's really where the problem comes in with just getting like a certification and just getting go to a boot camp. It's the fact that like there are limits to it. Like and it sucks. It's like but another thing is like it's because like the things you learn when you go get your degree is just like just so much technical knowledge that it's like yes you can go learn yourself but you have to be an insanely motivated person an insanely disciplined person to actually put yourself through what you need to learn in order to do it and like the thing is like most of the highest paid engineers are not web developers, they're not front end developers, they're working on like systems engineering like system architecture like on bigger things that kind of require you to have some type of like deep computer science background to be able to really just approach it confidently and like feel like you know what you're doing. So I would say certifications are great as an add-on to your degree, but without that foundation it's like you're just adding certifications to sand and like you're kind of capped at a point. And this is like what I've heard from so many people that I've talked to. Like I've had people that did boot camps are like, yo, I want to go back to school. What's up?
Yeah, I agree with you on that to some extent, but I feel like it's good to be mindful of like some people's like position or within relative to their life. So,
No,
because
yeah,
I've
that's
had I've
fine.
had people like college like like family friends and stuff like college educated and some that got in the tech field through just like one random certification back in like 10 or 15 years ago, and now they work as Google. So it's not,
I don't,
what was that?
I want to say that there's a bunch of different cases. I think one like if you don't want to pay for college, then like you don't have to pay for college. You can still break into tech, right?
Yeah,
Two, if someone got a degree, like the thing is like a lot of these companies are just more specific about like did you get a degree? Like you
yeah,
could get a
the
degree.
checkbox.
It's just a checkbox. It's literally just like a checkbox. And it's nothing more than the fact that like, and I was specifically talking about like if you wanted to move up and continue to be like a
Yeah,
software engineer, because if you want to be like keep going up as a software engineer and now go into another position, like you're gonna need a degree at some point, unless you're gonna just
yeah,
get stuck. But I think like if you want to go into just any other parts of like product management, I know someone that got a bio degree, and they're doing product management at Microsoft, and so it's like you're right. Like it depends on the situation, on the case. I just think like most of the time, it's like if you're
yeah,
already like if you have an opportunity to go to college, it's like it's not a bad idea.
yeah. Definitely if you're like still young, like
Yeah.
teens or like early 20s, but for a lot of people, it's like if you're, I don't know, over the age of like in your like 30s or something, I'd say like probably either an associate's or some so like study, because even boot camps, like to get into the good ones,
Hmm.
like Hack Reactor and some of the other popular ones that feed into like these big companies, you can't just like go to their website and sign up. Well, technically you could, but that's not how you're going to get accepted. Like you have to have some prior interest. So um, even those, they're still pretty rigorous, even though they're technically considered boot camps and they're looked down upon, um, like from people who go to like universities. But it's it depends where you're at. If you have the time, it's definitely like preferable. But for a lot of people, like a 4 year degree, like you said, is hard. It's
Yeah,
like it's not, if you're like have a family, if you have stuff like that, it's not something that is realistic for you.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. And I was talking from the perspective of like, you just, yeah, like you said, relatively young. It's like it's one of those where it's like you do it in like when you're young, it just pays off in the future. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else. I know it's like six, so I don't want to.
Yeah. I just have one more question. I wanted to ask so me and sorry about like all the questions. I'm just
No,
really
you're good.
like
Yeah,
enthusiastic
I
about
love
this.
it.
But so me and Nathan, we're like I'm the vice president and Nathan's the president. We're trying to like transfer into UT. So we already submitted our applications.
Hmm.
And what do you think is like a good, like what are your tips? I know you got in like straight in as a freshman, but do you have any tips for transferring to UT?
I wish I could be more specific about it, but I don't know too much. But I do know like from what I've heard from people is like solid, like, keeping your solid GPA. The fact that you guys are doing this club, like I think that definitely puts you at a really strong position. I also think that sometimes like if you do get in, but sometimes they might not put you straight into like the CS department, but they might be giving you like they have like these things where it's like you have to take like certain CS courses and see how you do for them like can let you in. But I would say like you can still take that path because like they're pretty chill about it. Like if they do allow you to like, take those classes, they're practically saying like you're good. You just have to like not fail these. Like you have to like pass these. I think like B, which is very doable. Which is very doable. So, but the biggest thing I know is like if you guys have a strong GPA, and you guys are involved in this club, leading in and everything like that shows great initiative, and so like you should be good, but I can't promise anything.
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, thank you so much for your time again. Like, this is really helpful to me, and I know Jason was recording this. Is it okay if we share this with other club members and
Yeah, of
like
course.
their
Yeah, of
YouTube or something?
course. Thank you, Jason.
Cool.
Do you want to
Yeah,
plug
yeah, I
your
really appreciate all your
podcast or
time.
anything?
Oh
Yeah, I was about
yeah.
to ask that if you can.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. So it's called Adapt or Die. Maybe I can. It's called Adapt or Die, and like if you go look at it, the cover art is like a tree. It says AOD is clouds, and it's like two people reading under that tree. And like the idea of the podcast is like I read a whole bunch of different books, not technical ones for the pod, but like different ones about life. Like I don't know if you've ever seen like Atomic Habits, but we just kind of like talk about them, talk about like the lessons we learn from them. So like if you ever just kind of want to get a little learn about a lot of different things. Just kind of big. If you're big into like self improvement, that's really what my podcast is about. Besides that, like I mentioned, I guess let me pull up my LinkedIn so you guys can just like send me a connect. But I'll love to connect. Like I'm very happy to answer any questions you guys send over there. I I don't check as much as I should. Actually, I do get emails all the time. So if someone sends me like an actually good message, then like, well, if you ask me like a good question, then I answer. So, uh, oh yeah, there's the YouTube channel as well. So, but yeah, that's everything I have to plug myself in. Greatly appreciate you guys taking time to listen. Great questions, amazing questions. Um, this is very impressive. Thank you so much. Hey, keep believing you guys yourselves. That's really all that matters at the end of the day. If you believe you can do it, you can do anything. That's what I tell myself every day. So, with that being said, I do have to roll out. It's been an honor. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Malik. Thank you,
Mm.
Jason, Jacob, Daniel,
All right.
Jordan, Lucian. I said that right. All right. See
All
y'all.
right, take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, see y'all.
See ya.
Bye.